Station 2, defining the joule. So this is a 100 gram mass here, and one way in which I could lift it up onto this bench is just by using a little bit of my breakfast. There we go, so I've lifted 100 gram mass up a height of roughly 1 metre. And the force that's needed to keep the 100 gram mass moving is 1 Newton, more or less. So a force of 1 Newton moves my load by about 1 metre. I'll come back to that calculation at the end of this little session. Right, so there are other ways in which I could do the same thing. Here I've got a power supply, it's plugged into the mains, so the electricity is coming from some sort of fuel probably. It might be a gas-fired power station, that's the most likely original source. And when I press the button it lifts the 100 gram mass up by applying a force of 1 Newton, and it moves it by 1 metre. Try that again. There we go. Okay, so 1 Newton to move a 100 gram mass and raise it 1 metre. Here's another way I could do the same thing. This time it's coming from my breakfast again, but I'm pulling downwards rather than upwards. And in order to do that, I've moved the string and therefore the mass a distance of 1 metre. Okay, one more way of doing that would be to use this equipment here. And what I've got is I've got a 100 gram mass down there, and that's connected over the string goes over the pulley, and it's connected to a long spring which is clamped onto the bench. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to release the spring, which is stretched at the moment. So I'm going to move this out of the way. And then I'm just going to control this a little bit so it doesn't go too fast, but I'm going to allow the spring to contract, and that lifts the 100 gram mass up again, and if I had a slightly higher bench I could lift it through 1 metre. So those are all different ways of applying a 1 Newton force to move a 100 gram mass by 1 metre. Now, there is one other way in which we could think about that. If I go back to my original 100 gram mass, which is down here on the floor, then I don't have to lift it all up in one go. If I'm feeling particularly weak, then I could use a small amount of my Weetabix to lift it up to here. So I've only lifted it by about 50 centimetres. And then I could do another lift to raise it from there up to here. And maybe it's dead obvious, but the overall effect is the same. I've still moved a 100 gram mass by 1 metre, but I've done it in 2 50 centimetre steps. And the amount of Weetabix that's needed to lift it up 50 centimetres is half of the amount that it takes to lift it up 1 metre, and these two amounts just add together, so half the amount of Weetabix, half the amount of Weetabix again, and that's the same as the amount of Weetabix if I lifted it in one go.